Hi, welcome to another episode of Northwest Outdoors. I'm producer Rick Spencer. On this show, we head down to southeast Oregon near the town of French Glen and go fishing for rainbow trout at a high desert fish camp.
I have no idea how big this fish is, except that was a very heavy surge on the take. When you see a fish boil like that and he's not jumping, he's pretty heavy someplace. That's going to be a dandy fish. Stay out of those weeds, baby. Come on, out of those weed beds.
Learn a survival tip, chicory coffee. You can make it home. Stay tuned. This is your Northwest Outdoors. Funding of Northwest Outdoors is made possible in part by O'Loughlin Sports Shows. Puyallup, Portland, and the Redmond Sports Shows are proud supporters of public television throughout the Northwest, placing an emphasis on education for the great outdoors. By Kershaw Knives of Portland, Oregon. Makers of precision tools and cutlery, Kershaw Knives continues to support outdoor programming and outdoor activities throughout the Pacific Northwest. We are at 4,600 feet above sea level in the high desert country of southeast Oregon. High Desert Cowboy Camp guide and outfitter Steve Byerland invited Northwest Outdoors fishing host Hobart Manns to fly fish for rainbow trout. This territory near the small town of French Glen is true cowboy country. Here, a visitor can get away from crowded lakes and streams and enjoy nice solitude.
We're here this morning with Steve Byerland, a guide who's invited us up to spend a couple days with him fishing up here in someplace in far southeastern Oregon. Where are we at, Steve?
Well, we're actually located about 20 miles from French Glen, the foothills of the Steens Mountains. We're on a private ranch. The landowner we're working with him, and he's allowed us to come in and fish his lake and his streams that he's got on his property. It's quite a large ranch, and it's really a nice resource.
It appears to be. You people said that you've done some stream restoration projects to help bring back the fishery, or at least sustain it in this lake?
Yes, we have, and we're trying to do as much natural management as possible. We do catch and release here. We don't have a large impact on the fish.
Now, this morning we've pretty well figured out that, or at least you have, that these fish are pocketed just above us here in a little channel area. And that's where you want us to go try and see if we can't get one of those fish that are cruising in and out of that little stream.
And we got some real nice fish in here with big shoulders, real wide across the back that are cruising in here and sucking bugs off the surface. And it's just a kick in the fanny to take them out of these weed channels. And it's something a lot of fishermen ignore because they think they're going to lose them in the weeds. And you're going to lose a few, but the excitement of sneaking up on them and hunting them and casting back into a pocket they're working is what it's all about.
Were these boats are styled after something you would have seen in Asia, or are they ones that you've invented over here?
Well, I have clients of all ages, whether they're 10 or 12 years old or 80 years old, and my concern about a boat was safety, and so we designed these boats for the lake here and to use on our other lakes. They certainly handle about any stream around, but where there's lots of stability, and you can stand in them if you have good balance. They'll handle about any water we have up here. It gives you a high casting platform, and if you see us sitting in the weeds here, they'll go over about anything. You know, they float very shallow.
Yeah,
they're a little bit bigger than the normal pontoon boat.
They really do float very nicely, and as you say, they skim right along on a couple of inches of water, and they are stable. I can stand up in it without falling down, and if the poster child for instability can stand up, they are stable.
We've got a pretty cold creek coming into the lake here. In this hot desert country, the upper layer of the water becomes fairly warm at times. You know, it'll get into the low 70s, but in this particular, along this creek here, this water coming in is quite a bit colder than what the lake water is. And these insects hatch in the creek and then work their way down the stream, and big rainbow come in here, sneak up along the weeds, and they'll use the shade. We got one thing going against us right now is the high sunlight. If you watch real close, you'll see them moving and working. On here I've got what they call a sly line or a slime line. It's a clear monofilament. I've got about 8 foot, 9 foot of leader tapered down to 8-pound test because I need that power in these weeds, and it tends not to spook them. You don't really want to be using much of a sinking line because the water is shallow, and but you got to keep that fly moving in through there. You'll find that sweet spot where you can retrieve that fly as slow as possible without getting hung in the weeds. And every spot you're going to fish is going to be a little different. So if you can find that speed that works for you, and those fish are aggressive just like that. Stayed on the stripping. There he goes. You got to get right after them. Keep their head up. This is a small one. I think it's a brookie. Yeah, little brook trout. Up out of the weeds there, baby. Even a smaller fish like this could be a handful in this water. Look at the colors on this brookie. See the fins and the native look on it?
Everyone was starting to catch fish, and the guests seemed to be having a grand time, even with the thermometer nearly hitting 3 digits.
Came up, grabbed that fly. We've been looking for him to hit for quite a little while. Now the man says, keep the rod tip up, keep that fish in this little pool, don't let him get away. I have no idea how big this fish is, except that was a very heavy surge on the take, and he's doing his thing out there. We've been casting for him for about a half an hour, and we finally got him to take. When you see a fish boil like that and he's not jumping, he's pretty heavy someplace. That's going to be a dandy fish. This makes me very nervous. You come up here to a place like this, and I haven't been back up in this country probably in 25 years, and it's nothing's changed. The fish are still big, they're still wild. Very tough place to fish. That's a dandy fish. Stay out of those weeds, baby. Come on. Out of those weed beds, back up in there. There he goes. Well, he's not as big as I'd like. I can see him, he's probably about 15. I was hoping to get your big brother up there. We're gonna get you pretty soon. Get him around here to the other side. Get him around here. I wanna bring you around. Get out of those weeds, baby. I'm gonna see if I can do a little work here with his head, Rick. Just a second. Get him around. Oh, get out of those weeds. I know there's big ones in there. Too late. That was a quick release. But the nice thing about it is that trout gets to back and he's got a trophy.
He's got a fly.
I think he's got that little bug in his mouth, but he'll probably get rid of it very shortly because those hooks are not stainless and they'll rust out, so that fish is going to go home free.
You know, I look at my fly box sometimes, Hobart, in the selection of colors and sizes, and it even kind of mystifies me sometimes. But there seems to be an opportunity for about every fly in the box at some time. I've got some pink leeches here that I've used on some of these high desert lakes that people kind of scoff at, but at times they've been the only bug they've ever taken, you know, for us, you know, and done real well with them.
If it's working, don't change it.
Yeah, I like these smaller pheasant tail nymphs, these muskrat nymphs here with the soft hackle in front. The prince nymphs are just, they seem to work anywhere you put them, Hobart. It's just one of those flies that that just works, and if I don't know what to use, bead-headed prince nymph is what I'm going to put on if I've got the depth of water, and if I don't have the depth, I'll go with a non-bead head. He is just barreling down in there.
Boy, that looks like you got a halibut, not a trout. That fish is really barreling down.
I got him up.
We moved from the inside out to the outside edge of these weed beds. The water's a little deeper. Sun value's a little changed on the water. What a gorgeous fish. I can see him shining from over here. How big is it?
Oh, he looks 17 or so, you know, 17 inches.
That is a beautiful fish. That's a size 14 fly?
About a 12.
About a 12. Doesn't take a very big bug to make him happy.
No, I think a big bug makes them unhappy. They're just cruising in here, just happy fish. There he goes.
Good job.
I see 2 or 3 more over here on the edge of the weed bed, cruising very cautiously. I'm going to get this little pheasant tail nymph out there again. You seem to have a cruiser there in front of you, but I don't see anything right here just right now, but I'm going to lay and wait.
You're laying and waiting, and I'm doing the proverbial knot surgery over here.
Remember, Hobart, the more your line's in the water.
Oh, you're cruel.
You don't want to strip your line very far, but 3 or 4 inches and fairly steady. I don't mind when I cast to let the fly sit on the water for a minute, but then I like to keep it moving. But an awful lot of these times you see people making big strips, you know. That doesn't do anything for me, you know, but there's been a lot of fish caught with it. The fish in here, Hobart, will run, from about, generally the ones we're catching run from 15 inches up to 27 inches. And there has been fish caught on this lake to 34 inches. Unfortunately, it was not by me.
Or me so far.
But the bigger ones are a little harder to come by. The lake's 41 feet deep, and I think that they tend to lay in a little deeper water, don't quite get into these weed beds as much. But I'm sure after the sun goes down and it gets pretty dark that they're in here with everybody else chasing these bugs around. These great big ones tend to be not too acrobatic, and they conserve some of their energy. Anytime you can catch a 20-inch fish, you know, on a fly is a nice fish. Isn't that a nice sound?
Yes, it is. You really can't put too much pressure on him with that light rod either.
Well, what I've done here, Hobart, is that I can put as much pressure on this fish as I like because I'm running 6-pound test tippet.
Yep.
And so that's more than the rod really needs. But if I want to pull on him hard, I can just flatten the rod out and be able to, you know, give him that extra pull. That last few feet's always the hardest.
Ooh, he's a little longer than that last one.
I try not to use the nets if I can help, but we'll just bring him around here over the oar, and I'm just going to reach down and leave him in the water and release him. Right in the corner of the mouth, as you said. Out of here.
Oh, you're so smooth. you make it look professional. There he is. Just like the man said.
As the day wore on, it was time to head back to camp after a few more casts. It turned out to be hard for Hobart and Steve to stop angling for these gorgeous rainbows. Darkness comes late in this country, and when the sun dips down over the horizon, the neighborhood herd of antelope don't mind a curious camera. But as quickly as they showed up, they were gone. We have more from the high desert country in southeast Oregon, but first, here's a cooking tip from Earthwalk Northwest, the School of Primitive Living Skills.
We're going to show you how to make a wonderful root beverage out of the chicory plant. First of all, we need to know how to find it. So we'll go over some identification features here. Chicory grows across the country, so we can find it no matter where we are. Chicory flowers come in this wonderful blue color, although they can even be white or pinkish in color. The leaves, as they begin to grow up, look very similar to dandelion leaves, although they have fuzz or fur on the back midvein of them. These leaves themselves can be used in many different ways, but for this segment we'll focus in on the root of the plant. All you need to do is go and dig some up, usually in the fall of the year after it's finished blooming, or if you can recognize it in early spring from the previous year's growth, you can dig it at that time as well. We dig up the root, which is sometimes single taproot, or in this rocky soils that we have here, we see that the root is a little bit broken up, so it's multiple taproots here. We're going to take this root back to camp, wash it up, and show you how to prepare it into a wonderful coffee substitute. Well, here that chicory root is that we just harvested. We've taken and washed it off, getting all the dirt off of it. And our next step to make our coffee is to take this root and dice it up before roasting it. So I want to take and dice it very small, very even, and then it goes into the skillet for drying and roasting. Chicory is one of those plants that makes just a fabulous root beverage. People oftentimes liken it to coffee, but it has its own unique flavor to it. Chicory root has kind of a sweet after flavor to it, and that's what makes this one so special. So we'll finish dicing here using the whole root. I have very thin pieces here. I'm going to chop it a little bit more. And now I'll transfer it over to the skillet where it can dry and then begin to roast to a dark brown color. And what we're going to do first of all is dry it out. And the drying removes some moisture so we can then take the root and roast it. We can dry it in many different ways. The quick and easy way in the field is to take our skillet out. Cast iron skillets work really well. And we begin just by adding a little bit of heat to dry the root. And the idea is to bring it to a nice, dark, rich brown color, almost black, just shy of being burnt. And that sweetens up the root so we can then brew it into our coffee substitute. Now here's our finished chicory root. This has been dried and roasted, and it's a real uniform consistency because we put it through our coffee grinder at home. The next step is to take it and brew it, just like we would coffee. Now we don't use the same amount. It's about 1/3 to 1/4 the amount that you would use of regular coffee. So a little bit of chicory goes a long way. We'll put it into our pot of boiling water and allow that to brew for about 2 or 3 minutes. Here's our roasted chicory root beverage. No caffeine in it, fresh from the earth.
After fishing on the high desert trout lake, we left the 4,600-foot elevation level for a sightseeing trip on the nearby Steen Mountains. At nearly 10,000 feet above sea level, the Steens are 10 miles wide and filled with steep gorges plunging more than 3,000 feet. The Steens are accessible by driving to different viewpoints, where visitors can walk along trails and view the wildlife and really take in the grandeur of the area. This large impression in the earth is called Cicory Gorge, carved out by glaciers over 1 million years ago. Along in the group is the camp's very own cowboy poet, Leon Flick, who without warning will belt out a thoughtful message that he wrote himself.
Like a shining shrine, the sun come up o'er that silver sea of sage. The rays enhance the newness of the dawn. The vastness of the land rolled out, a game in which man plays a simple pawn.
Located on a 100,000-acre private ranch, Byerland has access to untouched fishing, and getting there is half the fun. It certainly can be worth a chance to dip a line for some of the famous wild desert red band trout that live here.
Tell me about this fishing down here, what we're doing, Steve.
Well, here in Eastern Oregon, there's a lot of really small streams. They run real cold, they have real deep undercut banks, and the trout lay back under those banks. And people really mistake these fish for being stupid, for being aggressive. They're very aggressive, but they're not stupid. We like to wear muted colors so that we don't stand out. We kind of blend in with the sagebrush and dark grass and whatnot as we come in here. And the sneakier you are coming to these fish, the more you're going to catch. They're very aggressive fish, but they're not stupid. The water's clear, and so if you come up behind them, they don't see you as much, but you can get up around the bend and let it fly down into a corner or whatever. I would suggest casting with a short leader because of the breeze and the width of the stream.
So if we work upstream, the chances of fish seeing us are going to be far less than if we go downstream.
Sure,
Okay.
And you just want to kind of get over along the edge of the stream and kind of slip along. You'll see a pool like this, and there's these deep pools on these corners, and work that pool. Once you do that, work up and get the next pool.
And the normal fly that we're going to find in an area like this, we should be looking for some early grasshoppers coming out.
Some of the grasshoppers right now that I'm seeing, about everywhere you look, there's grasshoppers hopping. They're a little on the small side yet, but they will still take them. And I think a lot of times we come over these streams and we bring a hopper pattern that is too large. And one of the tricks I always like to do is to go along the grass and get some of them in the water.
That's called the San Juan Shuffle.
And as they float down, the trout will show you where they are.
Things like this are just seldom seen and found and gotten to fish. It is fun.
When you're fishing these streams, a fly that comes down, even though they're really narrow in small streams, if the fly doesn't come down on the side of the creek that the fish, his feeding lie is on, he probably won't take it. So be sure and fish all angles and all feeding lies as the fly goes down. And you'll produce a lot more fish. And I can't stress enough the need to be kind of stealthy working these streams. You're going to catch fish, but how well are you going to do? We all kind of like to catch the big one, and you're going to catch bigger fish being more stealthy. It certainly can't hurt you. Little guy. Little guy. That's not the one we're after. We won't handle them, we just get to hold the fly and turn it upside down. Much better on the fish if you don't, you can keep from handling them.
Something we like down here. He finally turned me loose.
We have a lot of stream over here, Hobart, that every one of them has got a character of its own. Some are mountain streams, which are pools shaded by trees and cover. Others are meadow streams that cut back on themselves over and over, like this stream here. They hold a lot of grasshoppers, mayflies, mud burrowing insects. You know, you dream about streams like this.
Oh yes, you do.
And
I'll continue to dream about it.
There's about 4 miles of this stream running down through here. We have many creeks of fish that are coming off the steams. Some of them are public access, some are private, but even the public access streams are very seldom fished.
What I'm using here today is a caddis, and that, as Steve has said, is one of the favorites. I'll try and get it up here where you can stand up a little better and get a little better look at it. But that's probably one of the standard standby patterns. If you had a caddis, a blue dun, perhaps a mosquito, a woolly bugger, and a grasshopper, I don't think you'd need any more than that for the whole year.
Yep, that's about covers it. You should have a nymph that'll go under the surface, you know.
Hobart's got a fish. How highly irregular is that? They're just dandy. You just wouldn't think that a little creek like this would have fish that size.
Now, many people ask why we don't use nets, Hobart, and they do a little bit of damage to the fish, and we just rather slide them up on the bank and release them. And we don't have to pack them.
How much shorter do you want me to bring that
Bring
leader?
a little bit more. Over to me.
A special fish like that in a body of water like this really makes a day. Isn't that a gorgeous fish? What do you
The
figure?
white tips on the fins.
Yes.
He's about 14 inches, I think.
Yeah, that's what I'd say too. He's
Yellow on
just
the belly.
dandy. Thank you, fish.
If you would like to go online and learn more about this show, 1405, the High Desert Cowboy Camp in Southeast Oregon, or the Survival School Earthwalk Northwest, click on www.northwestoutdoors.org. On the next Northwest Outdoors, head to Lake Chelan and go fishing for lake trout. Then learn how to cook crab cakes from the seafood experts. Plus, take a tour of the Umatilla, Oregon Fish Hatchery. That's on the next Northwest Outdoors. Funding of Northwest Outdoors is made possible in part by O'Loughlin Sports Shows. Puyallup, Portland, and the Redmond Sports Shows are proud supporters of public television throughout the Northwest, placing an emphasis on education for the great outdoors. By Kershaw Knives of Portland, Oregon. Makers of precision tools and cutlery, Kershaw Knives continues to support outdoor programming and outdoor activities throughout the Pacific Northwest.